This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
Whatever verdict comes down in Donna Adelson's trial, the truth is the Adelson's family life and legacy has already been rewritten in permanent ink. The ripple effect of this case is not confined to a courtroom in Tallahassee or the Florida Department of Corrections. It extends outward into living rooms, schools, workplaces, community gatherings, shaping identities, relationships, and reputations in ways that will outlast prison sentences and headlines. The son is already serving life, Charlie, without parole for orchestrating the murder of his former brother-in-law. A daughter lives under the shadow of implication. Never charged, but permanently associated with the crime in the public mind. Grandchildren are growing up with a story about their family that they didn't choose, can't change, and will become confronted with again and again as they get older. And now the matriarch faces the possibility of dying in prison. These are the conditions that create intergenerational trauma. Trauma that isn't just about the event itself, but about how it's remembered, talked about, and carried forward by people who weren't even present when it happened. For the grandchildren, the psychological task ahead is staggering. In early childhood, grandma is a simple role. The person who visits, gives hugs, maybe slips a piece of candy into a hand. That's the image they start with. At some point, whether throughout overhearing adult conversations, stumbling across news coverage, or being told directly at school, that image is going to collide with something very different. The woman in those holiday photos is accused of orchestrating a murder. The murder of your father. Reconciling those two realities requires a kind of mental gymnastics that most adults struggle with, let alone children. Do they split into two people in their minds? The loving grandmother and the alleged conspirator, and keep those separate? Do they merge them into one complicated, very flawed person, or do they reject one entirely, either cutting her out of their memory or refusing to believe the accusations altogether? None of these options come without cost. And this isn't a private struggle. In a case with this level of media coverage, the world knows the family's name. At school, at college, in the workplace, peers and colleagues can connect the dots in a second with a search. That can mean direct confrontation, questions, judgments, even harassment, or the subtler but equally corrosive experience of feeling watched and whispered about. That's where the question of identity takes center stage. Do you keep the Adelson name and live with the constant recognition, change it to create distance, at the risk of feeling like you've erased part of yourself, even if they change it? The digital age, the link is still just a few clicks away. That kind of inherited notoriety can shape career choices, social networks, even where someone decides to live. That's what these grandchildren, Wendy's kids, have to face. For the adults in the family, the problem is different, but no less severe. How do you maintain loyalty to a loved one convicted of a serious crime without losing credibility in your community? Some relatives will stay firmly in the camp of support, visiting, writing letters, advocating for appeals. Others will create distance, publicly or privately, to protect themselves or their children from being drawn into the glare of the case. Both choices carry emotional weight. Support can mean aligning yourself with someone the public sees as dangerous. Distance can mean living with guilt or stepping back. The guilt takes many forms. There's survivor's guilt. I still have my freedom. They don't. Complicity guilt. I should have seen this coming. I should have stopped it. Guilt by association. I didn't do this, but the world looks at me differently because I'm part of this family. Left unaddressed, guilt can harden into shame. And shame is corrosive. It isolates. It silences. It keeps people from seeking help. One coping mechanism that appears in families like this is denial, sometimes total, sometimes selective. The story gets rewritten, the charges were exaggerated, the witnesses lied, the trial was rigged. It's in its most protective form. Denial allows family members to keep loving the convicted person without confronting the weight of what happened. But it also freezes a story in a way that prevents healing. You can't process grief or anger about something you insist never took place. And if younger family members are raised in an atmosphere of denial, they may grow up without the tools to talk honestly about the event or their feelings about it. There's another danger here. In families where prosecutors allege control and manipulation, those dynamics can survive a conviction. Influence doesn't necessarily die when a prison door closes. Letters, phone calls, even conversations during visits can be used to reinforce loyalty, direct behavior, or maintain the family narrative. If someone has spent decades in a position of authority within the family, that role doesn't automatically dissolve with sentencing. For younger or more dependent relatives, the pull can be very strong. The community's role in all this can't be underestimated either. In a high-profile case, the community isn't just the neighborhood. It's the broader public audience. Every social interaction is filtered through what people think they know about the case. For some families, the judgment comes in silence. Invitations not extended, conversations that die when you walk into a room. In other cases, it's vocal and aggressive. Confrontations, taunts, or public shaming. Either way, the effect is to limit the safe spaces where the family can breathe and be themselves. That kind of isolation can delay or derail emotional recovery. In some rare situations, families in this position make a deliberate choice to engage publicly, to give interviews, to tell their side, to become activists for reform. That's one way to reclaim agency, but it's a high-risk move. It can backfire if the public sees it as self-serving or if new evidence contradicts the family's statements. And as for the children, it can mean growing up in a public battle they did not choose. So what's a long-term prognosis for a family like this from a psychological standpoint? The best-case scenario: to slow, intentional rebuilding of trust within the family. Honest acknowledgement of what happened, and a separation of individual identities from the family's collective reputation. That means giving each member, especially the younger ones, permission to define themselves on their own terms, without inheriting the guilt or defense of older generations or following the orders of them. The worst-case scenario is a closed loop of denial and loyalty where the next generation inherits not just the name, but the unresolved conflict. In those situations, the crime remains the organizing principle of the family, not as an event in the past, but as the live wire running through every interaction, shaping choices for decades. For the public, there's the broader takeaway here. We're quick to focus on the defendant, the trial, the verdict, but in cases like this, the blast radius is wider. It includes people who never set foot in the crime scene, never spoke to a lawyer, never appeared on a witness list, but who will live with the fallout for the rest of their lives. It's a reminder that crimes of this scale don't just create a victim and a perpetrator. They create concentric circles of impact, each one altering the lives inside in ways that they cannot be undone. For Donna Adelson, the verdict will decide where she spends her remaining years. For her family, the sentence has already started. The question now is whether they can find a way to keep that sentence from defining the next generation as completely as it has defined this one. Tell me your thoughts in the comments section. If you're not on YouTube already, find us there. You can watch us do all of these stories and comment. We'd love to have you there. Just search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Be sure to press subscribe while you're there and search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi wherever you get podcasts as well, so you can take us on the go and listen wherever you may be. Love to hear your thoughts on this case as this trial begins to ramp up for Donna Adelson. We'll be covering it every single day, so press subscribe so you don't miss any of our trial coverage here at the Hidden Killers Podcast and True Crime Today. I'm Tony Bruschi. We will talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers Podcast.